Good morning, my lovely things. Welcome back to the cavern. To the newcomers, welcome. I'm Kasara, and this is the Cavern of Secrets. Happy Tuesday. I hope everyone is doing phenomenal and enjoy their weekend. As I mentioned last week, I give a detailed description of what exactly dissociative identity disorder is, which is a mouthful. So going forward, it's going to be known as DID. And some interesting factoids about the disorder. Friday, I'll discuss Ted Bundy and see if he did have the disorder, because it's speculated that he did, which is interesting, along with any other potential ailments that he may have been diagnosed with. And in another video, I'll discuss those disorders in detail like I am doing right now. Just an update about next month. I will be returning to telling scary stories of my own creation, because I love doing that. It was a lot of fun. And doing a lot more horror reviews since October. I usually watch a lot more horror movies. And my goal every October is to try and find as many horror movies that I haven't seen, because it's more interesting, I guess you could say, than watching the same ones every single October. I get kind of bored. Although I do have some favorites that I watch every October. The Crow being one of them. I watch it every Devil's Night, which is October 30th. And Scream, I watch every October. Sleepy Hollow, things like that. I'm not sure what else at this very moment, though, that I'll be covering at this very moment. If my haunted house story gets published next month, which I'm really hoping it will be, I'll do a reading from it, just to give you all a sense of what the book's about. And if you want to go purchase it, to read more, you can. But I'll keep you all posted on all of that. So, what is DID, or dissociative identity disorder, or multiple personality disorder as it was called back in the day? Well, to answer that, you kind of got to know what dissociative disorders are. And those are mental disorders that involve a disconnection and lack of continuity between thoughts, memories, surroundings, actions, and identity, which is a lot. DID is a trauma disorder in which the survivor has undergone long-term repeated trauma in early childhood. And usually it's in the form of some type of abuse or severe emotional neglect. However, there have been cases where a person becomes traumatized from seeing a body, witnessing a shooting or a murder, surviving a car accident where everyone else died in the car, things like that. The trauma mixed with the other factors results in a dramatic interruption of psychological development, specifically in terms of identity. Through a process known as dissociation, the prevented development results in differential states, also known as parts or alters. They each may think, act, and feel different from one another. These parts of the mind also may have their own name, age, and personality traits. They are able to take executive control over the body, leaving the survivor without any awareness for the time they are absent or gone. These amnesic gaps in memory can be for just a few moments, a few days, or even entire chunks of one's childhood. The alters exist to help the survivor cope with deeply painful and unconscionable trauma, holding it outside their awareness to the best of their ability. This safety precaution can turn into an inadequate trait, causing real-life consequences. So, for instance, if an alter is a speed demon behind the wheel and they drive reckless, an addict being more promiscuous or just more impulsive overall than the host, that can cause a lot of issues for the host going forward, especially if they end up in jail for those impulsive behaviors. Additionally, these experiences can be and often are happening alongside symptoms of PTSD and possibly symptoms of other co-occurring disorders, commonly seen in trauma survivors. And some of these co-occurring disorders can be, according to the DSM, are borderline personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, and things like that. If you want to know more about those, let me know in the comments below and I'll do a separate video explaining what those are in detail. DID is not rare, not as rare as I thought anyways. It's actually more common than bulimia and even on par with conditions like OCD, which is overcompulsive disorder. However, it is hard to gather statistics on a community of trauma survivors when it's built on secrecy. People can be afraid to discuss such trauma or want to even bring it up because they don't want to remember that traumatic event or events in their life. Or even worse, receiving a diagnosis that is severely stigmatized, like DID or other disorders that are out there. The other factor with this disorder is many may not even be aware that they have this condition because of the amnesia. People with DID are not villains or dangerous killers like we see in the movies. There are, of course, some, but for the most part, they are harmless and just need assistance with their disorder, but not all of them actually need help. Some actually live pretty peaceful lives with their alters. I actually did meet someone who was diagnosed with DID, and to me, they were complete sweethearts. Granted, I didn't see them all the time and spend extensive amounts of time with them because I wasn't their clinician. I was actually there to help his wife. I wasn't there for them. So I never saw any of their alters, or maybe I had and I didn't know it. It's very possible. There is a debate on whether DID is real. There is a significant amount of research indicating that this is a real disorder. However, because there have been people who have tried to fake this illness and have or almost succeeded, it makes the disorder complicated. One such individual was a serial killer named Kenneth Bianche, one of the Hillside Stranglers. I'm not sure if any of you remember or are aware of the case or have any familiarity with it. The only reason his claim of multiple personality disorder, as it was called then, was dismissed was because he never underwent any physical abuse that he claimed during childhood. He faked it to try and gain the insanity plea that his defense attorney was fighting for. Now, if he did have childhood trauma that he claimed, I do wonder if he would have received that insanity plea, which kind of terrifying if you think about it. However, just because there have been people who have lied or tried to fake having the disorder doesn't mean it's not a real disorder. There are people who actually have been diagnosed with this and really do have alters that they live every day with. A common trait for most host parts of a DID system, they initially have no awareness of their trauma or the inside chatterings of their mind. Once starting therapy, receiving a diagnosis, or becoming familiar with the condition, the entire path to healing focuses on gaining access to all of that information, as well as establishing communication with the parts inside the brain. However, without therapy, some can become aware of a few traumatic experiences and be able to recognize signs of switching or learn about themselves through old journal entries, photos, their wardrobe, reading old letters they don't recall writing, and many other methods. Most switches in DID are not obvious, detectable, or dramatic like we see in the movies. While some hints of detection can be seen among friends and therapists, most changes are passable as completely normal behavior. DID is a disorder structured around concealment. Alters learn how to blend in, and many who do have considerably different personality traits, mannerisms, accents, and often try their very best to mirror their host's presentation, which I think is kind of terrifying. Because then no one would know that they switched and it's somebody else. And my thing is, what happens if the host comes back during one of those interactions with a friend or family member or therapist and they don't know what's going on? That's probably terrifying. I would think that would be terrifying because now you don't know what the heck is going on. DID results from a failure to integrate into one identity, not a whole that breaks, shatters, or splits like the movies. DID also only develops in early childhood, not later on in life. Current research suggests that around the ages of 6 and 9 is when it usually occurs, while there's actually been research that lists even early as age 4, which is surprising since most people don't really remember much from that age, but I guess anything's possible. Survivors with DID cannot switch on demand if needed. Some people, there are moments where they can call upon a specific alter for specific tasks, but there's no guarantee in this, or absolutes. Because it's usually, a hit or miss, and sometimes it never actually happens. Communication with alters is also believed that it happens by seeing them outside of the host and talking to them like a regular person. There are exceptions to this, but the only way would be if the person has psychotic symptoms on top of the DID, because to see an alter would require hallucinations, which is not a symptom of DID. It's also incredibly rare for a person with DID to communicate in this way, as well as inefficient. Usually survivors with DID see and speak to their alters internally, inside the mind, which often includes a landscape called the internal world. Communications can happen through passively influenced thoughts face to face in each other's respective bodies in the internal world as well. In DID, the voices and conversations are not actual auditory hallucinations. They're not hearing voices. That's, again, another disorder entirely. What they actually hear in the conversations are more like loud versions of one's thoughts. Frequent means of communication usually take the form of journaling, post-it notes, art, non-dominant handwriting. So if the alter is a left-handed individual and the host is right-handed, they could pretty much have a conversation with each other through that method. Pictures, online blogging, social media, voice recordings, videos, and any other method to communicate with one's alters or hosts is what they'll find a way to use. Alters are not just variations of the host at different traumatized ages of their life, as it's been believed. The parts can be of any gender, age, or personality type, like I mentioned. And it actually goes a little further than that. They can have different outlooks on the world, faiths, sexual orientations, political views, and anything else, which can also include foods. The host may hate certain foods, but an alter may love those foods. Things like that. Even music, drinks. It's very interesting how different it is. People with DID can live successful lives and they can have healthy relationships, although that's been... A lot of people believe that that can't happen, but it has. Some believe that those with DID are cheaters or unfaithful to their lovers, but that's not true. Everybody's different, and that's the same with people with DID. It honestly depends on the individual because everyone is different. Many exist in exclusive monogamous relationships, and typically the people with DID are actually usually the ones worried about being cheated on or becoming inadequate, burdensome, or dissatisfactory to their partners. Too often they are the ones who are left. And another commonality with DID is self-harm, suicide ideation, even addiction, which those all coincide with depression. And that would probably explain the feelings of inadequacy, burdens, being a burden, or dissatisfactory. DID cannot be treated with medication, which I didn't know. I thought it could be. And usually the method that is most used in treatment is integration of all parts into one personality or mind. However, since everyone is different, complete integration into a single individualized identity, known as final fusion, is the goal for some, but not everyone. It is possible to achieve full healing by processing memories, establishing communication across the whole mind, lowering dissociative barriers, and ultimately have everyone working towards a common goal, all without experiencing the fusion at any parts at all. Some may choose to integrate a few alters or aspects of themselves to downsize, but still leave a small system to go about their lives. Others also may start the process, but find that it's not for them and separate again, either spontaneously or with intention. Demon possession may also be a form of DID, which I didn't even know. Since it's actually in the DSM, when I was looking into this for my thriller novel, the diagnosis, it's a section within DID in the DSM-5, and it makes sense because the individual seems to switch to this demonic presence where they change their voice, give a different name, and seemingly can speak another language, which sometimes they can. And how they can change to another language. If an alter learned the language secretly or just picked it up, that would explain why they can speak another language. And while I was in college, we actually discussed a case which was used for the plot of The Conjuring 4, The Devil Made Me Do It. I'll leave a card above me for those of you who want to check that out and see what my thoughts are on those films and that one specifically in terms of psychology and what they kind of messed up for the movie because they want to make it demons and all of that for the sake of fear and scary horror movies. But it's not what really happened, and I'll explain all that in a little part. So I'll leave more information about this disorder below, along with some information about the link between possession and DID, because that was actually really interesting to me. And it really makes sense. I honestly thought that it was schizophrenia at first. Like, it was a form of some type of schizophrenia, but no. I found DID fascinating, like I said, from the time I watched Sybil in high school. And I've always wanted to know more about the disorder, and when I actually spoke to somebody who had been diagnosed with DID, it made it even more interesting to me, even though they weren't my client. I still was interested in it. Thank you all for sticking around till the end. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to click that subscribe and like buttons to show your support for the channel and myself. I hope you all have a wonderful week, and take care until next time. Bye, everyone.